When everything breaks, that is when truth begins to surface. When the walls of comfort collapse, the illusions of control disappear and the weight of expectations crushes you. What remains is raw life itself. In that moment of destruction, you meet yourself for the first time, without the masks, without the stories. What seems like an ending is often the beginning of something far more powerful. Life does not destroy you, it breaks the shell that confines you. When everything falls apart, it is not destruction, it is transformation in disguise. Life often tears away what we cling to so we may see what truly matters. The collapse of comfort is not cruelty, it is cleansing. When you lose control, you meet reality as it is, raw and unfiltered. The pieces that break are not your end, they are the fragments that reveal your beginning. Every ending that feels unbearable is simply the fire that burns away illusion and purifies the core of who you are. Pain does not come to destroy you, it comes to shape you. It is the chisel that carves depth into your being. In the silence of suffering, you begin to hear the truth of your own strength. Every heartbreak, every failure, every shattered dream is a test of your inner endurance. The moment you stop running from pain and face it with awareness, it turns from a tormentor into a teacher. Pain does not shrink you, it expands your capacity to live deeply, to feel fully, and to rise beyond limitation. When your plans crumble, life is not being unfair, it is redirecting you. What you build from ambition may fall, but what you build from awareness will stand unshaken. The fall of the old is the invitation to create something truer, freer and stronger. Those who fear the fall never rise. The breaking of your plans is not the loss of direction, but the discovery of purpose. Life dismantles the false, so you can rebuild upon what is real, and that is how wisdom is born. Strength is not about resistance, it is about surrender. To accept what is without complaint or denial requires a courage that defies logic. When you stop fighting against the current, you discover the rhythm of life itself. Acceptance is not weakness, it is mastery. Through acceptance, the chaos becomes clarity and the storm becomes a mirror. When you no longer demand that life should happen your way, you open yourself to the vastness of what life truly is. When the old self has been reduced to dust, that is where the new begins to rise. The ruins of who you were become the soil for who you are becoming. Building again is not about restoring the past, but creating from a place of truth. The emptiness left by loss is not a void, it is a space of creation. The unbreakable version of you emerges not by escaping the fall, but by embracing it fully. Only when everything breaks do you finally begin to build, not from fear, but from freedom. Pain is not your enemy, it is your greatest teacher. It enters your life not to harm you, but to awaken something buried deep within. When pain strikes, it dismantles the false layers of pride and pretension, forcing you to confront your own truth. It strips you of comfort, of certainty, and of all the illusions you thought were strength. What remains after pain is not weakness, it is the raw essence of your being, fierce and unyielding. Through pain, you learn to endure, to evolve and to embrace the chaos that life brings with unshakable grace. Pain does not arrive without purpose. It has a way of carving through the mind's clutter and revealing what truly matters. Every ache, every loss, every wound is an invitation to look deeper. Pain stretches the soul and expands your understanding of yourself and others. It teaches humility, patience and resilience, qualities that no comfort can ever offer. When you stop seeing pain as a punishment, it becomes the sculptor that shapes your spirit into something refined, something more complete. In the moments of deep suffering, when all you want is relief, remember that the lesson is hidden in the endurance. The more you resist pain, the more it persists, But the moment you surrender to it, the energy shifts. Pain demands presence. It forces you into the now, where healing begins. It takes away distraction and compels you to feel, to see and to awaken. You begin to understand that life's harshest blows are not meant to destroy, but to clear the path for a stronger, wiser version of yourself to emerge. Those who have known pain deeply are often the ones who carry the greatest depth of compassion. They understand the fragile nature of existence and the silent battles others fight. Pain softens arrogance and deepens perception. It turns judgment into empathy and fear into understanding. What you learn in suffering cannot be taught in peace, because pain refines the edges of the heart until it becomes capable of both strength and tenderness. When pain has done its work, you rise differently. You rise not with arrogance, but with quiet power. The scars you carry are not signs of defeat, they are marks of transformation. Pain leaves behind a wisdom that no book, no teacher and no philosophy can impart. It is the fire that burns away all that is false, leaving only what is true. To fear pain is to fear your own evolution, for it is through pain that you discover the vastness of your strength and the boundless depth of your spirit. The breaking of your plans is often the making of your path. When everything you designed with precision begins to fall apart, it is not life turning against you, it is life revealing a deeper design. The plans you create come from what you know, but what life has for you comes from what you have yet to discover. When the structure of your plans collapses, it tears open the space for something larger to unfold, something beyond your limited vision. The fall feels painful, but it is only the hand of life guiding you where your mind refuses to go. When the plans you trusted begin to fail, confusion takes over and fear rises like a storm. But in that storm, clarity begins to form. It is in failure that you learn the language of surrender, the acceptance that not everything is in your control. What breaks is not the purpose, but the illusion that you were the one controlling it. Life does not take away your plans to punish you, it removes them to prepare you for something that cannot be planned, something meant to be lived. Every collapse is a cleansing. It wipes out the false ambitions, the borrowed dreams and the illusions of permanence. When your plans crumble, you see what was never real to begin with. The comfort you once depended on starts to disappear, but it leaves behind the strength of self-reliance. You begin to walk not by the map you drew, but by the light of awareness that grows within you. It is in the ruins of the old that your true path begins to reveal itself silent and certain. When life breaks your plans, it demands that you evolve. It compels you to listen, to adapt, and to trust the unknown. You start to see that loss is not the absence of direction, but the opening of a new one. The fall of what you once valued makes space for something purer to rise. It is through losing what you thought you needed that you discover what you truly are. The very ground that shattered beneath you becomes the soil where your strength takes root. What collapses was never meant to hold you, because it was too small for what you are becoming. The plans that fall apart are the cages you outgrow. Every time life breaks what you built, it is setting you free from the limits of your own creation. What you rebuild after the fall carries the essence of truth and the clarity of experience. You no longer build for validation, you build from understanding. The breaking of your plans is not your downfall. It is the birth of your path. True strength is not born from defiance, but from the quiet power of acceptance. Resistance drains the spirit while acceptance transforms it. When you stop fighting the way life unfolds, you begin to move with its rhythm rather than against it. The mind always wants control, but life cannot be controlled, it can only be experienced. The moment you release the need to dominate every outcome, peace begins to settle within you. It is not the strong who fight endlessly against life, it is the wise who learn to flow with it and find freedom in that flow. Acceptance is not submission, it is clarity. It means seeing things as they are without coloring them with judgment or fear. When you accept reality, you stop wasting energy on resistance and start directing it toward transformation. The one who accepts can act decisively without confusion or bitterness. Acceptance sharpens your perception because your mind is no longer clouded by denial. You become calm, centered and aware, moving with precision instead of impulse. Those who resist what life brings become trapped in endless struggle. They cling to what should have been and suffer because they cannot see what is. Resistance blinds you to the beauty hidden in difficulty. It makes you a prisoner of your own expectations. But when you accept the inevitability of change, you stand firm even in the storm. Acceptance does not weaken you, it fortifies your spirit by teaching you how to bend without breaking. Through acceptance, strength takes a new form. It becomes silent, steady and deeply rooted. You begin to understand that not every battle is worth fighting and not every loss is defeat. Some doors close not to block you, but to redirect you towards something greater. Acceptance gives you the wisdom to distinguish between what must be changed and what must simply be embraced. This balance is the true essence of strength. When you live with acceptance, life stops feeling like a fight and starts to feel like a dance. You move with its rhythm, not out of surrender, but out of understanding. Each challenge becomes a step, each fall becomes part of the flow. You begin to see that real power lies not in controlling life, but in aligning yourself with it. Acceptance allows you to meet every moment with grace and rise above what once felt unbearable. Through this harmony, you discover that true strength is not about conquering life, it is about becoming one with it. Every breakdown is a sacred invitation to rebuild yourself, not from memory, but from awareness. When everything within you seems to collapse, it is life demanding your attention. The identity you built from the opinions of others, the dreams borrowed from comparison, and the beliefs shaped by fear, all of it begins to shatter. What breaks is not you, what breaks are the layers that kept you from knowing who you truly are. In that breaking, awareness begins to rise like light through cracks in the darkness. It is not destruction, it is awakening in its rawest form. When life pulls the ground from beneath your feet, it is showing you the illusion of stability you once depended on. The security you built through control and comfort begins to vanish and you are left standing in the unknown. It is there, in that emptiness, that awareness starts to grow. You begin to see that strength does not come from holding things together, but from allowing them to fall apart when they must. Awareness does not need walls to protect itself, it thrives in openness. Through awareness, you learn that survival is not enough, you must evolve. In breakdown, memory tries to drag you back to what was. The mind repeats its patterns, clinging to the familiar pain it understands. But awareness teaches you to step out of that cycle. You stop rebuilding the same house that keeps collapsing. You stop chasing the same versions of happiness that never last. Awareness shows you that every fall is a chance to rebuild with consciousness, to construct a life not based on past fears but on present truth. What rises from awareness can never be shaken because it is not built from memory. It is born from understanding. When you rebuild from awareness, you no longer move with desperation. You move with depth, you no longer act from the need to prove, but from the clarity of purpose. Each choice becomes deliberate, each step grounded. Awareness strips away the noise and leaves only what matters. You stop seeking approval and begin seeking truth. In this rebuilding, life gains direction not from plans or ambitions, but from the steady presence of your awakened mind. The one who rebuilds from awareness no longer fears collapse. They know that breakdowns will come, but they also know that nothing real can ever be lost. What is built from awareness stands not because it is perfect, but because it is true. Every fall, every failure, every heartbreak becomes another layer of understanding. You begin to see that the purpose of every breakdown was never to destroy, it was to prepare you to rebuild from a place that no storm can reach. Growth does not come from comfort, it comes from being stripped bare until you find what cannot be taken away. Comfort keeps you surrounded by illusions that whisper false security. It dulls your senses and weakens your will. When you live within comfort, you live half asleep, unaware of your deeper potential. Growth begins only when life shakes you out of that ease, tearing away everything you thought you needed. The moment you lose what you depended on, the real foundation of who you are starts to reveal itself. It is in that raw exposure that the strength of your spirit begins to rise. Comfort never demands transformation, it only asks you to remain still. But growth demands everything. It asks for your fears, your attachments, your false sense of control. When life strips you bare, you are forced to confront your own emptiness. You begin to realize that what can be lost was never truly yours. Every loss, every disappointment, every fall is a mirror showing you where you were still asleep. Growth is not pleasant, it is painful. But that pain burns away weakness and brings out the core of your power. When comfort disappears, the mind resists and calls it suffering. Yet, beneath that discomfort lies the seed of expansion. You begin to see what comfort had hidden, the vastness of your capacity to adapt, to rise, to transform. Life uses discomfort as a tool, a sharp instrument that cuts through your limitations. Each struggle becomes a test of your awareness. You learn to stop seeking shelter and start finding strength within the storm. The more you endure, the deeper your roots grow, and the more unshakable your being becomes. Being stripped bare means standing face to face with yourself with no excuses left to hide behind. It is in that state of complete vulnerability that true clarity dawns. You see your desires, your fears, and your dependencies for what they are, temporary and fragile. Growth does not come through acquiring more, but through shedding what is false. The process is not gentle, but it is sacred. What emerges from that bareness is authenticity, a self untouched by circumstance. What cannot be taken away is what you truly are. It is not your possessions, not your status, not even your dreams. It is your awareness, your spirit, your unyielding will to rise. Growth is the discovery of that indestructible core. Once you touch that part of yourself, comfort loses its charm. You stop fearing change because you have already met the part of you that cannot be broken. True growth is not about becoming more, it is about realizing what has always been within, waiting to be revealed once everything else is stripped away. The absence of certainty gives birth to clarity. When the familiar dissolves and the predictable fades, your dependence on the known begins to die. The mind trembles when it cannot foresee what comes next, but in that trembling lies awakening. Certainty traps you in repetition, but uncertainty opens the door to awareness. When nothing can be relied upon, you are forced to see without assumption, to act without illusion, and to live without guarantees. This is where clarity begins, not in control but in surrender to the unknown. When everything around you becomes uncertain, the mind searches desperately for ground. It wants to cling to something stable, something familiar. But when life denies you that stability, it is not being cruel. It is teaching you to stand without support. In that state of uncertainty, your perception sharpens, your senses awaken, and your understanding deepens. You begin to see that clarity does not come from having answers, but from being fully present with the questions. The unknown, once feared, becomes the very space where truth unfolds. Certainty is comforting but blinding. It gives the illusion of safety while dulling the capacity to see beyond limits. Uncertainty, on the other hand, breaks open the walls of false knowledge. It strips away assumptions and reveals the vastness of what you do not know. When you stop pretending to have everything figured out, you become receptive to wisdom. Every moment of not knowing becomes a moment of discovery. What once appeared as confusion transforms into curiosity, and curiosity leads you straight into clarity. When life refuses to fit your expectations, it forces you to wake up from the dream of control. You start observing instead of clinging, listening instead of reacting. This awareness becomes your inner compass. In the absence of external certainty, you begin to rely on inner stillness. Clarity rises from that stillness like a flame in the dark. It does not depend on what is happening around you, but on how deeply you are connected within. The deeper the uncertainty, the brighter that flame burns. The absence of certainty is not emptiness, it is infinite possibility. When you no longer demand that life follow your script, you open yourself to its vast intelligence. The mind that once sought answers now becomes quiet enough to perceive truth as it is. Clarity is not a product of certainty, it is born from the courage to face uncertainty with awareness. When you cease chasing control, you find a peace that does not depend on outcome, a vision that does not depend on light, and a knowing that arises from the depths of stillness itself. When you lose everything you thought mattered, the illusions that shaped your life begin to crumble. What you once considered permanent starts to dissolve, revealing the fragile nature of your attachments. Possessions, positions, and people you depended on may fade, but what remains is something deeper, your awareness of being. Loss strips away everything borrowed, everything artificial, leaving you raw yet real. It removes the mask that comforted your ego and exposes the core that cannot be broken. Through that exposure, you begin to understand that what you called yours was never truly yours. It was only lent to you for a while. As everything familiar falls apart, you are pushed into silence. The noise of ambition and desire begins to fade, and in that quiet, truth starts to speak. You see that the things you chased were never capable of giving you fulfillment, they only distracted you from yourself. Losing what you once clung to makes you realize that your peace was never meant to depend on the external. It was always meant to rise from within. You begin to stand in a stillness that no possession or achievement can offer, a stillness that remains untouched even when everything else disappears. Building again is not about returning to what was, but creating what can be. What was built before may have given comfort, but it also carried the weight of limitation. When something collapses, it does so for a reason, it has completed its purpose. Trying to restore the past is an attempt to rebuild the same walls that once confined you. True rebuilding begins only when you stop looking backward and start seeing what is now possible. The fall clears the ground for a new structure, one that rises not from fear of loss, but from understanding of growth. The urge to rebuild what was lost often comes from attachment, not awareness. Memory pulls you toward the familiar, convincing you that what was is safer than what can be. But life never moves backward. What ended was never meant to be permanent, it served its time and taught its lesson. When you rebuild, you must do it from consciousness, not from comfort. The past may guide you, but it cannot define you. Creation demands courage, the courage to let go of what is gone and trust in what is yet unseen. Rebuilding is not about replacing, it is about reimagining. It is an act of renewal where the ashes of destruction become the foundation for strength. The pieces of what broke do not need to fit the same shape again, they can form something entirely new. What fell apart did so because it could not contain the expansion you were meant for. When you rebuild, you are not fixing what was broken. You are building beyond the break, shaping something freer, truer, and more alive. Every time you build again, you carry the wisdom of what once failed. The mistakes, the pain, the losses, they become the bricks of resilience. The process of rebuilding tests your patience and your clarity. It demands that you remain steady even when the outcome is uncertain. Each step of creation must come from awareness, not desperation. In this state, what you build gains depth, meaning and endurance. It becomes something that reflects not your need to survive, but your decision to evolve. To build again is to declare that life cannot defeat you. It is to stand amidst the ruins and see possibility where others see endings. You no longer build from ambition or fear, you build from truth. What rises now carries the imprint of strength, not struggle. It is not a return, it is a transformation. The new structure is not a memory rebuilt, but a future awakened, born from the courage to begin again with nothing but awareness as your foundation. The foundation of a stronger self is laid only when the old structure has been reduced to dust. Strength does not grow in safety, it is forged in collapse. When everything you built begins to fall apart, you are left standing among the ruins of what you once called your life. That destruction is not cruelty, it is cleansing. It clears away the weak roots of dependency, fear, and pride that could never support real growth. The dust of the past becomes the ground on which something unshakable begins to rise. What breaks is not the end of your strength, it is the beginning of its creation. When the old structure collapses, it exposes the foundations that were never solid. You start to see where your strength was borrowed from approval, from comfort, from the illusion of control. Those supports vanish, and in their absence, you discover the necessity of standing alone. The fall strips you of pretense and compels you to rebuild from honesty. It is in this rawness, when everything false has burned away, that the first true stones of strength are placed. You stop seeking validation and begin to build from the depth of your own truth. Destruction is not the opposite of creation, it is part of the same cycle. What must rise cannot do so on a weak foundation. The self that was shaped by fear and expectation cannot carry the weight of your evolution. The fall is the test of endurance, the fire that tempers your will. In that fire, the fragments of your old self melt, and from that molten state, a new shape begins to form, one that is not fragile, not defined by circumstance, but anchored in awareness. Every collapse becomes a silent builder, working beneath the surface of pain. When life shatters everything you hold dear, do not rush to fix it, sit with the ruins. Watch the dust settle. You will see that beneath the wreckage, a new version of you is waiting, steady, silent, and unbreakable. What was broken was only the outer shell. What remains is your essence ready to build again, not from fear, but from freedom.